All right, this segment brought to you by the best breakfast place in East Tennessee. If you want the best breakfast, visit Scrambled Jake's at North Shore and Rocky Hill. Farm fresh foods combined with cutting edge takes on traditional favorites. Hey, for breakfast, for a business lunch, or for brunch with friends, Scrambled Jake's Breakfast Company is the place to check out. ScrambledJakes.com to see their menu for yourself. But it's much better just to go in there and smell the food and taste it than it is to look at that menu. Scrambled Jakes, trust me on that. All right, back with Chuck, Jimmy, and Ryan here with Texas and Oklahoma officially signing up to get here for the 2024 football season. That means the focus is now on the SEC scheduling plan. All of college football is going divisionless, so it's assumed the SEC is going to go divisionless as well. Conferences just sending their top 2 teams to the championship game now. The NCAA changed the rule. Odd thing is, if the NCAA didn't have that rule in the first place, you probably wouldn't have had all this conference expansion over the last 30 years.
Wow.
But the question is, will the SEC go to an 8-game schedule with one permanent opponent, or will it go to a 9-game schedule with 3 permanent opponents? And that would ensure that you play every team in the league every other year, and you play every team in the league twice every 4 years. Sounds perfect. So perfect, Andy Staples of The Athletic broke it down and gave his take. If we can get this. Now, I'm going to walk to the monitor to have to read this. This is how old I'm getting. Let's put this as plainly as possible, he writes. If you have Texas and Texas A&M in your league and you don't have them play football annually, you are stupid. If you hijack the league schedule for almost 20 years to ensure Alabama and Tennessee play every season and then stop playing that series annually just when it's getting fun again, you are stupid. If you stop playing the Deep South's oldest rivalry, Auburn, Georgia, annually, so Mississippi State can schedule another easy win, you are stupid. So, Chuck, my question to you, will the SEC be smart and go to a 9-game 6-3 format, or will it be stupid and stick with an 8-1 format?
Boy, you hope they'll be smart, don't you?
7-1, 8-game format.
Right. I think they're going. I think they're going to be smart. I hope they are. And I'll tell you, I think they're looking at the playoff expansion nationally. To me, that's part of it. Before I start beating each other up in the SEC. But for the fans and for revenue and for rivalry, it just makes more sense to me for the 9-game.
When I covered the SEC spring meetings last May/June, I came away convinced without a doubt they were going 6-3. I presented a 7-2 format with divisions to an SEC source, and he said, that's not going to get you home and home, so you need to rework that. And I said, what about 6-3? He said, yep. And I said, no divisions? They never even discussed going to divisions at the spring meeting. So you're right, they're not going to have divisions, and I am completely convinced and have been since the spring meetings they're going 6-3.
The only pushback here is what to do to make the schedule as equitable as possible. And that's where you run into issues. I think the money pushes me to think 6-3 is going to happen, and that's what they should do. That 9th game is going to add more interesting games for TV. They're going to want that. You're trying to get a big TV deal here.
Yeah.
That's going to strengthen your case for that. So I think they end up at 6-3, but I think there's some pushback because all these coaches are used to going 6-6, 7-5 to keep their jobs.
And 4 games are against criminal non-conference teams.
And now you're going to, first of all, you're going to endanger. Does South Carolina keep playing Clemson? Does Florida keep playing Florida State? Harder to do that if you have 9 conference games. So there may be some pushback from those teams who are not wanting to have two easy games instead of, say, 4.
Yeah, if it's the bottom of the league. It's the bottom of the league that's trying to hold you back, basically. And the thing is, it's going to come down to ESPN. The SEC cut this new deal with ESPN, and we'll get into that next segment. But then they added Texas and Oklahoma after cutting that deal. So if the ESPN comes back and says, yeah, we're going to up your money because you're giving us better games, I don't think there's any question. They look at the poorer teams and just say, hey, tough break. If ESPN says, nope, you don't get any more money, you just spread it out, which I don't think they'll do. But if they did that, then the SEC may stand pat. Let me put up a graphic here. You don't have to read through all those, and the orange ones are Tennessee. But if you go to a 9-game schedule, these are the new games you're going to get in the SEC, and these are the games you're going to see a lot more often that you just don't see now. That's a pretty big list, and that doesn't even include, that's just the names. That's not South Carolina, Missouri, Kentucky, Ole Miss, Mississippi State. That's just big name draws for national eyeballs. I think they'd be crazy to do anything other than 6-3. I really do. I think it would be an abdication of duty if they, I don't know, is that the right term? If they didn't go with a 9-game schedule.
The person I talked to had convinced me that that's what Greg Sankey wants, 6'3". And guess
Greg
what?
Sankey
Yeah.
wants.
Greg Sankey gets.
And look, if you're going to add Texas and Oklahoma, why are you going to leave money on the table and not take full advantage of, have them in the league? I mean, if you're going to go, let's go. And then you're hoping that you expand the big college football playoffs and more teams get into that. Otherwise, I think you're beating yourself up and you're knocking teams out of the chance to play for the national title.
Even in a 1-7 format, you still play every team in the league every other year, so it works out pretty well, all things considered. You'd rotate the 14 other teams, 7 and 7, and then you're playing the one permanent. So it still works out either way. You're playing those teams every other year. The problem some people are pushing back on this with is not every team has 3 permanent opponents they want to play every year, and how you divide those up becomes an issue. Tennessee's got easily 3 teams they want to play. They've got 5 rivals, I guess you could say.
Well-
But some teams have 1, and so who do you lock in those teams with as the every year opponents?
Well, but they've complained about that with just the every year opponents. So they
Yeah.
don't have one now.
Sure.
Go to 3 permanent and you build your opponents.
Also-
to me, Heupel said last year he threw out there Vandy, Kentucky, and Alabama would be theirs. Is that just wishful thinking, or is that what they passed around? They passed around a note. They did talk about them, and if that's the 3, now granted, you're rotating 6 other teams. You're not going to have an easy schedule in the SEC. But I'd like that a lot better than what they got now as permanent foes.
And you can develop the rivalries. For example, Tennessee and Florida, they were not rivals.
Tennessee and Georgia rarely
Yeah,
played.
And so then when you expanded, then those became huge rivals with division play added to
Yes.
that. So I think you can. But did you see what the proposal for Auburn was?
Yeah.
Yeah, Florida, Georgia, and Alabama.
Yeah.
Because those are their 3 oldest rivals.
That's Auburn was who I was going to bring up is that Alabama and Georgia alone, even if the third one was an easier team than Florida, that's a tough sell because I don't think anyone else in the conference will have Alabama and Georgia, the 2 best programs in the league right now. So how do you convince them to take that?
Take
Millions upon millions
Money.
upon millions.
Or you'll get nothing and like it.
The same way you convince Texas A&M to say, "Okay, welcome Texas." You put a gun to their head and wave a little money and you get it done. All right, when we come back, who won this round of expansion? If this round is over, and you never say never in this thing, who won, the Big Ten or the SEC? We'll look at the brands they brought in, what's better for the fans, but also money and television. So it depends on the way you look at it. That's next on the Sports News. Come on back.